Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we're talking about a very divisive JRPG in a series known as the Legends of Heroes, Trails in the Whatever. It is a series that spans 10 plus JRPGs. It's one of the biggest undertakings that you can tackle in video games right now because all these stories interweave and connect with each other in such complex, well-written lore, well-established characters. And I've just completed my journey of the Sky trilogy, which is the beginning of it all for the Legends of Heroes series. And I got some thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. Again, this is a divisive JRPG. A lot of people don't like Trails in the Sky the Third, which I have played for the first time ever. I want to warn you about two things. Number one, real quick, we don't have the complete box copy. It's like $200+. All of them are, I'm sorry, don't got the money for that. Don't have the game in hand. I hope you do understand in this situation. Number two, if you plan on getting into this series, now that I finished this part of the trilogy, I appreciate if you want to support the content. I want you here, but we have videos on Trails in the Sky FC, first chapter, Trails in the Sky SC, second chapter, and these videos are spoiler loaded, right from the get-go. You're going to get spoiled with stuff. So just be warned if you're planning on getting to the series and you're watching on that, you might ruin a lot of stuff for yourself because we are not holding back at all with the spoilers off the rip. To the Trails fans who have supported these videos, made them possible, thank you. It's crazy. I mean, it's such a niche JRPG series, so it's amazing to see these videos do well enough on the channel to keep doing them. And we have many more Trails videos to go through, so if you're into that type of stuff, consider subscribing. We talk a lot about JRPGs here. Let's get started with the gameplay so we can get to the story stuff as soon as humanly possible. So Trails in the Sky the Third is divisive for many reasons. One of them primarily being its focus on combat. It is more of a dungeon crawler than any other Trails game I've played, and I've played Cold Steel 1 and 2, and now the entire Sky trilogy. I like it. I like it a lot. I love that finally, in a Trails game, they understand the combat here is so good. Let it speak for itself. It doesn't always have to be miles and miles of text just with exposition. I know that's what the Trails series is known for. It's kind of a thing you got to accept getting into it, but I think there's a balance. You don't have to go so overboard sometimes, and I feel like this game said, you know what? What if we just put a lot more combat? We still have a ton of writing. There's still a lot of moments where you're sitting there reading text for 45 minutes. Don't get me wrong, still a lot of that. But what if we just let the combat, the dungeons, really flex their muscles? It worked for me. I love the combat in Trails, always have, always will. And finally, we have a game that puts it in the spotlight just as much as the story. That's the thing. What's happening is not a changing of the balance here, where now the gameplay's here and the story's down here. It's just evening out. There's an even dispersal of gameplay and story focus here that I really do appreciate. And what's great is the grinding is minimal. The only time I wanted to grind was the end of the game before the final dungeon, where you have to have your entire party around at least level 125 to enter the final area. You could go in straight from the get-go, but you want everyone leveled up so they're ready, they don't get their butts kicked. But what's amazing is how the XP scaling works, where if anyone's lagging behind, they'll get like 9,999 experience just like that, and everyone's leveled up. So there was minimal grinding, so it was just letting the combat be this fun thing of character building with the quartz, with the ruby gem, the water gem, sapphire gem, and building these busted characters with Colonel Richard and Ren in the party. Oh my god, the amount of turns I stole with Colonel Richard was just too dang high. It was so nice. Of course, as always, there's turbo mode. I love that this game series provides turbo mode. It's weird because when I talked about turbo mode with Final Fantasy fans for Final Fantasy X, I was told I rushed the game, even though you can't turbo mode the cutscenes like you can in Trails. I hate to break it to people, but like sometimes just speeding up the animations doesn't mean you're trying to rush the experience. You're just like, okay, I don't need to sit here for double the amount of time that this animation would take, and eventually I can get to the story stuff a little bit quicker, which is pretty nice. So turbo mode is here. It's much appreciated, but what's great is it's not there just to simply, I'd say, account for poor design. Like I feel like Cold Steel 1 in its base form didn't have the turbo mode that eventually in the Decisive Edition they added in. I had to play Cold Steel 1 on my PS Vita, and yeah, no turbo mode will add some hours to your game clock. My friends beat Cold Steel 1 in about 45, 50 hours. It took me 89 on my Vita. There's a difference maker there. Big time. So just keep that in mind, that type of stuff is super important. But what I like about Sky is here in the third, they added fast travel, something that the other entries didn't have. So when you go through these 7 planes in the game, you can fast travel to all different areas, the doors you discovered, and not have to find them over and over and over again. This was really nice because it just made it where you were zipping from point A to point B. If you wanted to go back to the base, adjust some things with your squad, buy some things, restore some health or whatever, you could do just that. So for me, I really like the design of this game at its core. The turbo mode, the combat, all strong, fast travel, great quality of life change. Another gameplay change that I do want to cover more in the story are the doors. So as you're going around these levels, you're going to find moon doors, sun doors, star doors. They'll have these are the long-winded character moments where you're just sitting there reading text for up to an hour. To me, it's like those moments where you just plan to read a book. Get comfortable, get cozy. You're going to be here for a little bit. That's why playing this on the Steam Deck on and off was really nice. When I was doing some door grinding, I called it, this was really nice to have. It was a luxury. It definitely improved my opinion of the game because I wasn't hunched over my PC, just like sitting there like, oh yeah, let's read some text. I was just cooling it in bed. TV was on in the background. I was like, all right, let's go through some doors here. So that was nice to have, but these were some really big character building moments. And for you Trails fans out there, don't spoil it for me. Everyone's going to Crossbell. Everyone's going to Crossbell. And I know that's where the next set of games I'm going to play ends up, with Zero and Azure. But Estelle and Joshua are going to Crossbell. Ren was going to Crossbell. There was some talk about a lot of other characters going to Crossbell. I'm wondering if this Avengers moment is soon coming upon me. I don't know yet. But these doors were kind of like epilogues. After you finished Sky SC, what happened? And it's a weird story in how it's delivered because it's very much in its own pocket. It sort of feels like it's not having any immediate effects on the Trails universe because everyone's just going to go back to their lives like a month or so after Trails SC ended. However, as we get deeper into the story discussion, I think there's more long-standing ramifications here with Phantasma. That's for sure. So as you're exploring these levels, you're also going to find ceiling stones. These ceiling stones will unlock characters to your party. Everyone you could find in the Trail Sky trilogy is here as a party member pretty much, which was awesome. Some really cool comps could be made, and it's why I loved the end sequence in this game where you had to make 4 parties of people you knew that were developed, that you cared about, and have all these different comps as you romp through these dungeons. I love that stuff, man. That was great, and I'm usually not like a dungeon grindy kind of JRPG fan. I like a balance. I feel like this game achieved it, but I know a lot of Trails fans are very story heavy. They want more of that stuff. This game brings a balance that I very much appreciate. This is also reused assets of the game. There are a lot, like you'll go through Grand Cell again. You'll be like, wow, it's the same to a T. It's not like Sky SC where the first half of the game, you're like, okay, I'm exploring these same areas. And so it makes sense why I'm seeing a lot of the same stuff. I can accept it, and then you get to like Liber Arc, and you start to see a lot of new content in the second half of the game where you're like, okay, I see where they spent their money. With this game, it was like Falcom just went like, gather everything that we have made, make Butler fill up a boss fight, do whatever you can. This game needs to get out for its story. We need to save some cash. There's a lot of reused assets here, but I don't know, the way they play with them through the story makes sense. So enough dilly-dallying. Let's get into that story. I usually don't take notes for Retro Rebound, although I'm starting to more and more to make sure I have everything prepared for the discussion. But the Trail series is where I initially made that exception because there's just so many things happening with its narrative that I find it even beneficial. If you were just playing it for fun, I'd recommend writing notes because there's so many key details that are just drip fed to you over time. And I noticed in my notes how the narrative was gradually building before my eyes before it amounted to a key moment with Father Kevin. I went, oh, I kind of saw that one coming. Not in a bad way. Like, oh, I was able to piece that together. It was a really good feeling. As many of you know, I say I'm really bad with theories. I'm really bad with like speculating where the story's going to go. But now like I'm taking notes. I'm becoming a student of the game. I'm like, okay, all right. I love what they did there. We'll talk about exactly what in a moment. For starters, this is all based around the Oriole, the Ariel, whatever you want to say it is. The Oriole, I believe it is what it is. But it is this gospel from Sky SC that LibreArc used to bring people's desires to life, and eventually brought that society to ruin, so it was sealed away by Celestios Lys and multiple other people, and now Phantasma is a subsection of the Oriole. So what's happening here is the Phantasma has latched onto someone, and you eventually find out it is Father Kevin. So it's this manifestation of Kevin's desires, and as the story progresses onward, multiple parts of Phantasma are manifestations of other people's desires. It's this otherworldly area that exists kind of between heaven and hell. And you go to hell in this game. You go to Gehenna. It's legit. It's awesome. What a great moment. Again, we'll talk about that. But it starts off with an emotional moment, right? Kevin's found on the streets by Reese and Rufina, and you see Kevin's depressed, and based off your interactions with him in SC, you're like, this ain't the Kevin I know. This guy's usually peppy, ready to go. Why is he all down and depressed? And you find out later in the game that was after he had killed his own mother, and it's why he knew who the Lord of Phantasma was the whole time. You see, what happened was Kevin's mom tried to kill him so that they didn't have to suffer any longer. He ran and she killed herself. So this carved the stigma inside of him, which then Phantasma latched onto. And it's amazing that they created this fantastical element to the story without really disrupting the actual believable nature of Trails, which is this fantasy RPG effectively. It's a really hard line to walk, but it's so logical. It makes so much sense how that transpired. You're like, okay, I get that. To me, Father Kevin was the star of the show here, right? You find out he absorbs the spear of Loa, and he killed Rufina. So he's killed people he is close to on multiple accounts, and then you leapfrog to the end of the game with him and Reese, and in order to remove the second part of his stigma, the lighter side of it, and to effectively turn off, if you will, Phantasma, they have to kill Rufina again. But this time, Kevin doesn't do it by himself. He doesn't carry this burden on his shoulders by himself, and I love that. What I wasn't crazy about, though, was Reese's reaction to Kevin killing her sister. It felt very JRPG, like, Kevin, why did you burden all this on your shoulder? Bro, he killed your sister. Have a little bit of a reaction. Like, she was immediately like, I get it, fam. It's cool. It's cool. It wasn't you. Like, there was no emotional to me response other than it's all about Kevin. And I like that, but it felt like they skipped a beat of, like, in my opinion, she loves her sister. She talks about her sister all the time. They both do. They remember her fondly. They're a big reason. She's a big reason why they're there. And it just seemed like she's like, I get it. You killed her. It's cool. And was more concerned about Kevin's well-being, which shows their relationship and their actual care for one another. Because in the beginning of the game, they're clearly like on awkward terms. So I get the mentality there, but I just feel like a beat was really skipped there. And there should have been some like anger, some more grief there before she really accepted it and brought Kevin some comfort in his situation. I feel like it would have darkened Kevin's character, hardened him a little bit more, justified some of his behaviors. So I do feel like that's a critique I have of the game. But where I loved some of the breadcrumbs they placed was the manifestations of desires in this game. So this goes all the way back to even Colonel Richard's clothing, where I feel like Falcom is just this very limited on resources. So they're like, we have to use Colonel Richard as the model is. How do we make sense of this? So they're like, Colonel Richard wants to be that colonel again, right? He's no longer this anymore after the events of Trails FC, but he wants to be this. So when he appears in Phantasma, he appears in the garb that you know him from in the first game, his most ideal form. You see Schwartzritter, right off the bat, I'm like, that's Love, 100%. It's one of my favorite characters from FC. That's got to be him. You can just tell by the smile. You can tell by the hair. And even though the player, clearly if they played SC, knows that's Love, Joshua apparently is just denying it the whole time. Another kind of mental leapfrog moment, but feeding into the breadcrumbs of his manifestation of not accepting that is Love is what created the mask that hid his face, that created a mystery of, well, what if it's someone else? And Joshua and Love got to see each other one more time and truly say goodbye. And Ren got to actually say goodbye to Love, which I thought was kind of a neat moment there, where he was like, you know, you never got to say goodbye. And that moment of mourning is so important when you go to the end of the game. And this was the tearjerker moment right here, before we get into the whole encapsulation of the breadcrumbs, right? The tearjerker moment was when Joshua and Estelle are breaking down Ren's grieving process and why she feels one way for Love versus the sadness she feels of saying goodbye to everybody. And when Joshua and Estelle are like, we want to be your family. And she says, I hate you, but I also kind of love you. And it's this moment of like, oh man, like get this group together, please. Come on, please. And it's like, it was one of the few moments in the game where in a game I've really ever experienced where I was like emotionally wanting for these characters to get closer. Like Ren, you know, you want this, stop resisting. And like Joshua, Estelle are being these parental figures that they don't have to be, but they're just so naturally caring and not like this JRPG-ified way of like, you know, we're just doing the right thing. We're just going to take on this murderous kid. Why not? Like they have a reason for genuinely having affection and love for Ren, no matter what, because of what they've been through. I really, really adored that. Getting back to the breadcrumbs though, all these things are manifestations of denial, of grieving, of desires. And so you start to put together, my guess was correct, that the Lord of Phantasma is Rufina, right? The one thing that Father Kevin has refused to accept for his entire lifetime. And so he's really, really grappling with this in what is the best moment of the game. That whole scene where they're in the church and they're going down the staircase and he's telling his whole backstory on how he killed his mom, on how he killed Rufina, and then Rufina appears, and then Reese dives into Gehenna herself, and Kevin leaps in after her, and they both literally go to hell together only to come back. Fantastic sequence. You see Weissman again, this son of a gun, and he's trying to convince Kevin to go back to his old ways. It is such a top tier moment. It was then and there that it really became solidified to me. Like I loved the game the whole way through, like start to finish, loved this game. But then and there I went, what do people hate about this game? The combat's excellent. The storytelling and character building here is phenomenal. And it feels like everything here is building for the future of the entire Trails series. And I feel like not only that, but the Oreo in Sky SC did get explanation, and they did a good job providing this idea of like these gospels are these secret powered items that can do all types of supernatural things. But I feel like this game gave me a good grasp and understanding of the true power and potential of them and how they can impact the characters closest to you. And I don't want to say which game, but the reason I love that manifestation of a character's desires is I think it creates a level of emotion, and it reminds me of Persona in some ways, of that manifestation of a emotion in a physical way. That just always connects with me, right? Like how does this person, thing, object become the theme or the emotion? How does that all transpire? It's always just connected and resonated with me in a deeper way. And this game's all about that. And there's just cool moments. Like I mentioned jokingly, you know, Philip is one of the most dope boss fights. Like that music that plays during his boss fight. And by the way, the soundtrack. Oh my God. I thought Sky SC had a good soundtrack. It just gets better. This is goated JRPG music. This whole trilogy has just convinced me. Like, I thought after playing Sky the Third, I was like thinking to myself, wow. And I thought after Persona 5 Royal, I was not going to experience a really good JRPG soundtrack until Persona 6. I really thought that was a legit thought that went through my mind. Ha, that's funny. Sky exists. Oh my God. It's worth playing for the music alone. It's just so cozy. And then this track that plays during like the Butler Phillip boss fight, it just kicks it up a gear. And I'm like, why is this so epic for Butler Phillip? Why? Still, awesome moment there. And you fight Cassius Bright. So this is a thing I loved because, again, it's what this whole game is about for me, is taking these things that are talked about a lot in all of this exposition and actually making them tangible things. Cassius Bright. This guy is so good. He's so strong. I haven't seen it. Yeah, he came in the end of FC and he beat up the final boss pretty quickly. Okay, big whoop. I softened him up for him. Now you get to go mano-y-mano with him, and he's got an S-Craft that will wipe your whole team in a moment, and it's a moment of just like, oh boy, wow, things are getting rough out here. For me, I thought Butler Phillip was a tougher boss fight, but that to me finally created this moment of, okay, I see why Cassius Bright is this threat. I really do have a grasp of that. And even the character building for him that he gets in this game through the doors, specifically Annalace's door, where you learn why he is called the Divine Blade, but wields a staff, and why he dropped his sword. So yeah, the story here was fantastic. This was the Trails game. Like, I liked Trails a lot. I really enjoyed Cold Steel 1 and 2. We'll talk about them in videos eventually. I did enjoy Sky FC to a lesser extent. I loved second chapter. I did enjoy first chapter to a much lesser extent, by the way. I think that's definitely the worst one of them all I've played so far. Second chapter was JRPG greatness in the second half. One of the best I've played. And the third was the moment I played it, put it down, and went, I get it. I understand truly now why when you get deep in this series you want to keep going. Because my first thought was like, give me Trails from Zero. Give it to me now. I don't think I can wait till September. And I never had that feeling. I was like, yeah, I'll get to them when I want to. You know, I'm enjoying these a lot. I'm definitely going to play them all, but I'm enjoying them. And they're not like something I'm in a rush for. Now I'm like, oh, I'm hungry. Give me another one. Give me another JRPG from the Trails series. I want more. And I got to pace myself because I know I'll burn through these. So we'll try Trails from Zero soon. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got to say about Sky the Third. So have you played this game? Let me know. Really looking forward to seeing people's thoughts on this down below, as I know this is a divisive Trails game. Other than that, I'll catch all of you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.